My name is Elena Vale, and I was 30,000 feet above the Atlantic Ocean when the man I hated most saved my life. His name was Luca Romano, a powerful Italian mafia boss wrapped in silence, money, black suits, and the kind of calm that made armed men lower their eyes before he even spoke. I worked for him at Romano Maritime, the legal face of an empire everyone pretended was clean. On paper, I was his accounts coordinator. In reality, I was the woman who fixed his numbers, carried his files, answered his calls, and watched powerful men fear him from across polished tables. I knew his ships, his private ports, his sealed contracts, his quiet threats. I also knew one thing with complete certainty. Luca Romano had no heart. I learned that 1 year earlier, when my mother was lying in a hospital bed waiting for emergency surgery, and I stood in his office with my pride broken between my hands. I had asked him for 1 day off and an advance on my salary. I had not begged loudly. I had not cried in front of him. I simply said, "Please, Mr. Romano, my mother may not survive the night." He looked at me in front of 3 men who worked for him and replied, "Personal tragedy does not pause business." That sentence did not just hurt me. It froze something inside me. My mother survived because an anonymous payment reached the hospital before midnight, but I never connected that miracle to him. Why would I? Luca Romano had already shown me what kind of man he was. From that day, I stopped expecting softness from him. I gave him perfect work, cold respect, and a hatred so controlled it almost looked like obedience. Now, 1 year later, I sat across from him inside his private jet because he had ordered me to attend a coastal business meeting with him. Outside the window, there was nothing but ocean. Inside the cabin, there was cream leather, dark wood, gold-rimmed glasses, 2 silent guards, 1 pilot behind a closed cockpit door, and Luca Romano reading a file as if the sky itself belonged to him. He wore a black shirt open at the throat, a dark tailored coat folded beside him, an expensive watch on his wrist, his dark hair pushed back neatly, his trimmed beard making his face look sharper than it already was. He was handsome in the cruelest way, the kind of man a woman noticed even when every sensible part of her warned her not to. I kept my eyes on my laptop. "You keep looking at me like you want to say something," he said, without lifting his gaze. I closed the laptop halfway. I was wondering if men like you ever feel guilt. The guard near the cockpit looked at me as if I had stepped too close to a loaded gun. Luca turned 1 page slowly. "Guilt is useless." "Of course you would say that." His eyes rose to mine, gray, cold, and steady enough to make my pulse trip. "Elena, do not start a conversation you are not ready to finish." Hearing my name in his voice always annoyed me. It sounded too controlled, too intimate, too much like he knew something about me I had not allowed him to know. I leaned forward, anger giving me more courage than wisdom. "I finished it the day my mother almost died while you talked about business." The cabin sharpened into silence. Luca's face did not change in the obvious way. He did not flinch. He did not apologize. Yet something moved behind his eyes, a shadow crossing deep water. Before I could understand it, the jet shook hard enough to throw my laptop off my knees. It hit the floor with a crack. A glass shattered near the bar. 1 guard grabbed the wall. The ocean outside the window tilted. The pilot's voice came through the cabin speaker, clipped and tense. "Sir, we have a pressure warning." Luca stood at once. That was when the right engine exploded. Orange fire flashed outside my window. The whole jet dropped, not like turbulence, not like a rough flight, but like the sky had opened beneath us. My stomach flew into my throat. The lights flickered red. Smoke pushed through the ceiling vents in thin black lines. 1 guard shouted in Italian. The other crossed himself. The cockpit door flew open, and the pilot yelled, "Brace! Impact in less than 1 minute." Less than 1 minute. The words emptied my body. My hands went numb. My seatbelt was loose because I had been too angry, too proud, too distracted to tighten it properly. I tried to lock the buckle, but my fingers slipped. The cabin pitched sideways. My shoulder slammed into the seat. Across the aisle, Luca saw me. He unbuckled himself. "Sir, sit down," a guard shouted. Luca ignored him. He crossed the falling cabin with 1 hand gripping seat backs, moving through chaos as if panic had no authority over him. A suitcase tore free and hit his ribs. Broken glass sliced across his hand. He did not stop. He reached my seat, dropped to one knee in front of me, and grabbed my belt. "Don't touch me!" I screamed. His eyes snapped to mine. This is not the time to hate me. It is the only thing I have left. Pain touched his face so quickly I almost missed it. Then he pulled the belt tight across my waist and locked it. The buckle clicked. The sound was small, final, terrifying. The jet dropped again. Metal screamed behind us. The wing outside my window burned brighter. Luca gripped both sides of my seat and placed his body in front of mine. "What are you doing?" My voice came out thin and broken. "Keeping you alive. You'll die." His mouth moved like he almost smiled, but there was no happiness in it. "Then at least you can hate me safely." I stared at him because I did not understand this version of him. The Luca I knew dismissed pain, turned need into weakness, and made compassion look like bad business. This Luca had blood sliding from his temple, and one arm braced above my head while the ocean rushed closer outside the glass. His hand came to the side of my face, firm and warm, forcing me to look at him instead of the water. "When we hit, keep your mouth open, protect your head, and do not fight the belt." My throat closed. "When we hit?" He did not lie. That scared me more than the fire. In that final second, with the cabin tearing itself apart and death rising blue and bright below us, I wanted him to know the truth. "I hate you," I whispered. His thumb moved once against my cheek, gentle enough to break something in me. "Good," he said. "Hate is strong. Use it." The ocean swallowed the jet. The impact broke the world. Metal shrieked. Glass exploded. Water punched through the cabin with brutal force. Luca's body slammed over mine, his arm locking around my head, my face crushed against his chest, against smoke, salt, blood, and the faint expensive scent I had always hated noticing. For one impossible second, I heard his heartbeat. Then the plane split open, sunlight vanished, and everything went black. I woke with sand in my mouth and blood on my tongue. At first, I thought I was dead. But dead people do not taste salt, cough seawater, or feel their ribs scream when they try to breathe. I opened my eyes to violent daylight. Waves hissed a few feet away. Palm leaves bent over me. Heat pressed against my skin. Pieces of silver metal lay scattered across the beach like bones. Luca Romano's private jet had been torn in half. One wing rested in shallow water. The tail was buried in sand, and smoke curled from the broken cabin. There was no runway, no city, no rescue team, no road leading anywhere. Only ocean in every direction, and a thin line of jungle behind the beach. I pushed myself up on shaking hands and nearly collapsed from pain. "Help!" I shouted. My voice cracked. "Is anyone alive?" No answer came from the wreckage. No guard called back. No pilot cursed. No footsteps rushed toward me. The silence after a crash is not peaceful. It is cruel. It makes every missing voice feel like a body. Then I heard a groan. I turned toward the sound and saw Luca trapped near the broken fuselage, pinned under a bent sheet of metal with sand and smoke around him. Blood ran down the side of his face. His black shirt was torn open at the collar. One arm was trapped beneath the panel, his free hand digging into the sand as he tried to push himself loose. His eyes found mine. "Elena," he rasped. Relief hit me so hard it scared me. "Luca?" His gaze moved past me toward the wreckage. "Run!" I turned my head and saw the fire. A thin orange line crawled across the sand, slow and hungry, following a dark trail of leaking fuel toward the broken wing. Toward him, my body froze. The man I hated was trapped beside a burning plane, and for one terrible second I had exactly what I once thought I wanted: a world without Luca Romano. I could step back. I could tell myself he deserved it. I could let the fire reach him and carry my hatred home like proof that justice sometimes had flames. His voice came again, weaker. "Elena, go." I looked at the blood on his face, the hand that had locked my belt, the body that had shielded mine when the ocean hit. I hated him for making me choose. I grabbed a broken metal rod from the sand and ran toward the fire. Heat slapped my face before I reached him. Smoke burned my throat. Luca's eyes sharpened. "I told you to run. And I told you not to touch me." We both ignored orders. I jammed the metal rod under the edge of the panel and pushed. It barely moved. Pain tore through my ribs, but I pushed again, screaming through clenched teeth. Luca used his free hand to help, his face going pale with effort. The fire crept closer. A small pocket of fuel caught near the wing, flaring bright enough to make me flinch. "Elena, leave it. Shut up. The tank may blow. Then stop talking and move." He stared at me, something almost like disbelief cutting through the blood and smoke. I pushed the rod down with every piece of strength I had left. The panel lifted an inch. Luca dragged his trapped arm free with a brutal sound that made my stomach twist. I reached for him and he grabbed my wrist. Together we stumbled backward across the sand. We had barely made it 20 feet when the broken wing erupted. The blast threw us down. Luca twisted mid-fall and took the impact on his shoulder, pulling me beneath him before fire and sand rained over us. For a second, I could not hear anything except a high ringing in my ears. His weight pinned me. His breath hit my cheek. His heart hammered against mine. He was alive. I was alive. I hated that my first feeling was gratitude. "Are you hurt?" he asked. His voice was rough, close, almost angry with concern. I shoved weakly at his chest. "Get off me!" He rolled away at once, then pressed a hand to his ribs and sucked in a breath. His left forearm was badly bruised, scraped raw where the metal had trapped it. Blood dripped from his cut hand. The blast had thrown sand into his hair, ruined his shirt, stripped him of every polished inch of power. Yet his eyes still searched my face before checking his own injuries. "Your temple is bleeding," he said. "So is half your body. Answer the question." "I'm alive." He looked toward the burning wreckage. "That is the only answer that matters right now." I followed his gaze. The fire was spreading through part of the cabin, eating what little remained of luxury. Somewhere in that smoke were the men who had boarded with us. I knew they were dead before Luca said it. His jaw hardened. He stood too fast and swayed. I grabbed his arm without thinking. He looked down at my hand. I let go as if burned. "Don't get sentimental," I said. "I saved you because you saved me. A fair transaction." "Exactly." He stared at me for a moment, then looked away. "Then we are even." The word should have satisfied me. It did not. We moved what we could before the fire took more of the wreckage. Luca gave orders because that was his instinct, and I argued because that was mine. Water bottles, a first aid kit, 2 emergency blankets, a cracked mirror from the cabin wall, a small knife from the galley, 3 sealed packets of dry food, a length of rope, a half-melted flare case with no working flare inside, a metal container we could use for collecting rainwater if rain ever came. No radio, no phone signal, no emergency beacon we could trust after a water crash. The sea had swallowed one section of the fuselage, and the cockpit was unreachable without crossing fire and twisted metal. Luca stood in the sand, counting supplies with the cold focus of a man building a kingdom from wreckage. I hated how useful he was. "We need shade first," he said. "Then water, fire, injury care, and a signal marker large enough to be seen from above." Still giving orders? Still alive because of them. "You mean because of me?" His eyes met mine. "Yes." The simple answer caught me off guard. Luca Romano did not hand out praise. He barely handed out oxygen. I turned away before he could see my face change. "Fine, what do you want me to do?" "Sit down. That is not useful. You have a head wound and possible bruised ribs. Sit down before you fall down." "I don't take orders from you here." "Then take advice from the man you dragged out of a fire." He reached for the first aid kit. I stepped back. "I can clean it myself." "You cannot even see it." "I can feel it." "Feeling blood run down your face is not medical training." I glared at him. He waited, patient in the most irritating way. At last I sat on a piece of broken cabin lining. Luca knelt in front of me with the first aid kit open between us. His hands were dirty, cut, and steady. He poured water onto a cloth, then paused. "This will sting. I've survived your management style. I'll survive antiseptic." A faint breath left him. Not quite a laugh, but close enough to unsettle me. He touched the cloth to my temple. Pain flashed white. I hissed and grabbed his wrist. His skin was warm under my fingers. He did not pull away. "Easy," he said. The word was low, not soft, yet nothing in it was cruel. He cleaned the blood with careful strokes. His face close enough for me to see tiny lines of exhaustion around his eyes, and a small scar near his eyebrow I had never noticed in the office. Without his black desk, his guards, his perfect lighting, and the distance he kept around himself like armor, he looked younger. Not harmless, never that, but human. That bothered me more than the wound. "Why are you looking at me like that?" he asked. "I'm trying to decide if the crash damaged your personality." "And?" "Too early to tell." He placed a small bandage at my temple. "Your sarcasm survived impact." "Lucky me." "Very." He said it without irony, and the word stayed between us longer than it should have. I looked away first. He cleaned his own hand next, quickly and badly. I watched blood keep sliding from the cut across his knuckles. "You missed a piece of glass." "It is fine. It is inside your hand." "I said it is fine." I took the cloth from him. "And I said you missed glass." His eyes narrowed. "Elena, this is not the time to be a Mafia statue." I grabbed his wrist and pulled his hand toward me. He let me, which surprised both of us. His palm was rougher than I expected, marked with old scars that did not belong to a man who only signed documents. I used tweezers from the kit to remove the glass shard. He did not flinch, though I felt the tendons in his wrist tighten under my fingers. "Do you feel pain?" I asked. "When it is useful." That makes no sense. Most truths don't at first. I cleaned the cut and wrapped it with gauze, making the bandage tighter than necessary because I was angry at how careful I wanted to be. When I finished, he looked at his hand, then at me. "Thank you." The words sounded unfamiliar coming from him. I almost told him not to say them, but the beach was too quiet, the dead too close, and my heart too tired for another sharp answer. By late afternoon, the sun had become brutal. Heat shimmered above the sand. The wreckage smoked less, but the smell of fuel still poisoned the air. Luca chose a place near the edge of the palms, far enough from the broken plane, close enough to the beach for visibility. We dragged fabric, cushions, and palm branches into a crude shelter. He worked with ruthless efficiency despite his injuries. I worked because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering the pilot's voice, the guard's silence, the ocean swallowing metal. At one point, Luca lifted a heavy piece of cabin lining and his face went gray. I caught the edge before it fell. "You are not fine," I said. "I am functional." "That is not the same." "Today it is." "You always talk like you're negotiating with your own body." "My body usually loses." "That is not strength." He looked at me. "No," I held his gaze. "No, it is arrogance with bruises." For the first time, Luca Romano had no immediate reply. We finished the shelter as the sun lowered. It was ugly, uneven, and probably useless against real weather, but it cast shade. On the open sand, we arranged reflective pieces of metal and pale fabric into a large X. Luca said aircraft might see it if anyone searched the area. I did not ask whether anyone would. Hope felt fragile, and I was afraid my voice would break it. As evening came, the island changed. The bright beach softened into gold. The ocean turned darker, endless and indifferent. Birds screamed from the trees. The jungle behind us rustled with life we could not see. Without the heat, fear found room to breathe. We ate half of one dry food packet and shared a small amount of water. Luca insisted I drink more. I refused. He stared at me. I stared back. "If you order me to drink," I said, "I will pour it on the sand." He handed me the bottle. "Please." That one word defeated me. I drank. Not much, but enough to make him stop watching my mouth like my survival was a problem he needed to solve. "How far do you think we are from land?" I asked. He looked toward the horizon. "Far enough." That is not an answer. It is the only one I trust. The honesty scared me. In the office, Luca's certainty had been unbearable. Here, his uncertainty felt worse. "Do you think they'll come?" I asked. He did not answer quickly. I appreciated that, though I wished I didn't. "They will search," he said. "My people will not accept silence." "Your people?" "Yes. Because they care about you?" His expression closed. "Because I am necessary." The words were clean, bitter, and almost invisible under his control. I heard them anyway. Necessary was not the same as loved. I knew that difference better than I wanted to. He stood before I could respond and gathered dry palm fibers, broken wood, and scraps from the wreckage. "We need fire." "Do Mafia bosses usually know how to make fire?" "Only the charming ones." I looked at him sharply. "Was that a joke?" "A small one. Do not make it emotional. I almost smiled. Almost. He tried the damaged lighter first. It sparked twice, failed, sparked again, then died completely. Luca stared at it with the same cold disappointment he usually reserved for incompetent men. "Are you going to intimidate it into working?" I asked. "I am considering it." "Let me know if it apologizes." This time, the corner of his mouth actually moved. It was quick and controlled, but I saw it. The sight did something strange to the air between us. He switched methods, using the knife, dry fiber, and a piece of metal from the wreckage to strike sparks. It took longer than I expected. His injured hand reopened. Sweat slid down his neck. He did not complain, curse, or ask me to take over. He worked with quiet focus until a tiny ember caught in the fibers. He leaned in and blew gently, protecting it with both hands. A small flame lifted out of the dusk. I watched it grow, stunned by how much relief one fragile fire could bring. Luca fed it slowly, patient now that patience mattered. Orange light touched his face, cutting warmth into the hard lines. He looked tired. Not bored, not cold, not untouchable. Tired. "How do you know how to do that?" I asked. His eyes stayed on the flame. "My father believed power should survive comfort." "That sounds like something carved over a prison door." It felt like one. The answer was too honest. I did not know what to do with it. Night settled fast. The island went black beyond the fire. The ocean kept moving, a steady breath in the dark. Every rustle from the palms made my shoulders tense. My wet clothes clung to my skin, and when the wind shifted, cold slid through me. I wrapped my arms around myself and tried not to shiver. Luca noticed immediately. Of course he did. The man noticed everything except how much damage his own words caused. He removed his dark coat from where it had been drying over a branch and held it out. "Take it." "No. Elena, you're injured. You are smaller. That is not an argument. It is physics. I don't want your coat." His eyes held mine across the fire. "I am not asking you to like me. I am asking you to stay warm." I hated the quiet concern in his voice. I hated that my body wanted the coat more than my pride wanted distance. I took it with stiff fingers and pulled it around my shoulders. The fabric was torn, smoky, and still carrying his warmth. It smelled like salt, ash, blood, and him. I looked into the fire so I would not have to look at his face. "Thank you," I said. He sat across from me, arms bare beneath his rolled sleeves, bandaged hand resting on his knee. A fair transaction. I should have accepted that. I should have let the words build the wall again. Instead, I watched him hide a shiver when the wind crossed the beach. He turned his face toward the dark ocean, jaw tight, pretending the cold did not reach him. The old Luca would have made that look like strength. The island made it look lonely. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The fire cracked. The wreckage cooled behind us with soft metal ticks. Somewhere in the jungle, something moved through leaves. I pulled his coat tighter. "Why did you save me?" I asked. Luca did not look at me. "Because you were going to die." That is not an answer. It is the only one that matters. No, men like you always have reasons. His gaze moved from the ocean to the fire. Men like me? Powerful men, cold men. Men who count everything before they move. And what did you count when you ran toward the fire for me? The question hit too close. I looked down. You had saved me first. A transaction. Yes. His eyes lifted. In the firelight, they looked less gray, almost silver. Then why did you scream my name? My throat tightened. I remembered it then, not as sound, but as a feeling torn out of me when I saw him trapped. Luca. Not Mr. Romano. Not boss. Luca. I hated that he remembered. Shock, I said. Of course. Don't sound amused. I would never. The silence returned, but it had changed. Something had entered it. Not forgiveness, not trust, something smaller and more dangerous. Awareness. I shifted under his coat and looked toward the black line where ocean met sky. Do you think we'll survive? Luca leaned forward, elbows on his knees, the fire cutting shadows under his cheekbones. Yes, you don't know that. No. Then why say it? His eyes met mine, steady again, but no longer empty. Because if I sound uncertain, you will stop fighting. If you stop fighting, this island wins. I do not intend to lose you to sand, water, or fear." My breath caught. He seemed to realize what he had said only after the words left him. His face closed, but too late. I had heard the crack. I looked away before he could punish himself for it. "I'm not yours to lose," I said quietly. "No," he replied. "You are not." The fire burned between us, small and stubborn against the dark. My body ached. My head throbbed. My hatred remained, but it no longer felt simple. The man across from me had broken my heart with one sentence a year ago, shielded me with his body an hour before impact, let me pull him from fire, cleaned blood from my face, thanked me, joked badly, built a shelter, made a flame from wreckage, and gave me his coat while he shivered in silence. None of that erased what he had done. None of it explained him. That was the problem. Monsters were easier when they stayed monsters. Luca Romano looked into the fire as if it held answers he would never ask for aloud. Beyond him, the destroyed jet lay under moonlight, proof that everything powerful could fall. I rested my bandaged temple against the torn edge of his coat and listened to the ocean. For the first time since the crash, I felt the truth settle over me. We were alone on a deserted island with no signal, no rescue, no food beyond scraps, and no one to trust except each other. The worst part was not the ocean around us or the darkness behind us. The worst part was that, after one impossible day, I was no longer sure I knew how to hate him. I woke to the sound of the ocean and the terrifying absence of Luca Romano. For a few seconds, I did not remember where I was. My body reached for the small apartment I had left behind. The street noise below my window. The cheap curtains moving in morning light. The smell of my mother's tea when she stayed with me after surgery. Then pain dragged me back. My ribs hurt. My head throbbed. Sand stuck to my skin. The coat around my shoulders was too large, too smoky, too unmistakably his. I sat up too fast and the island tilted. The fire had burned down to gray ash. The wrecked jet lay in pieces under the morning sun. The beach was empty. Luca was gone. A cold panic opened inside my chest. It was stupid, immediate, and humiliating. Of course he had left. Powerful men survived by choosing themselves first. Maybe he had found a better part of the island, a signal point, water, anything useful, and decided I would slow him down. Maybe the kindness of last night had been nothing more than crisis behavior, a temporary accident caused by blood loss and smoke. I pushed myself to my feet, gripping his coat with one hand and a broken piece of metal with the other. "Luca." My voice cracked over the beach. No answer. I hated the fear that rushed through me. I hated it more than I had hated him, because it sounded too much like need. "Luca." Something moved near the trees. I raised the metal shard, heart slamming against my ribs. Luca stepped out from the green shade with 2 coconuts tucked under one arm, a strip of torn fabric tied around his injured hand, and his black shirt clinging damply to his chest. His face was still cut, his jaw shadowed by exhaustion, but his eyes sharpened the moment he saw me standing. "Why are you holding that like you plan to murder the island?" I lowered the metal shard before he noticed my hand shaking. "I thought you left." The words escaped before pride could stop them. His expression changed. Not much, but enough. He crossed the sand slowly, as if sudden movement might scare me. "I went to find water." "You could have said something. You were sleeping. So you just disappeared?" He set the coconuts near the dead fire. "I do not leave people behind, Elena." That sentence hit a bruise I had not shown him. I looked away. Funny. I remember being left behind very clearly. He knew what I meant. I saw it in the way his mouth tightened. The hospital. My mother, his office, that one sentence he had used like a door slammed in my face. He did not defend himself. He only picked up one coconut and struck it against a rock until it cracked. "Drink." "I'm not thirsty." "You are dehydrated." "You don't know that." "Your lips are cracked. Your skin is flushed, and you almost fell when you stood. Drink." I took it because arguing required energy I did not have. The coconut water tasted warm and sweet, better than pride. He watched until I swallowed, then looked away before his concern became too visible. That was Luca's pattern. Care, then retreat. Give warmth, then make it look like strategy. We spent the morning turning survival into work. Luca found a narrow freshwater trickle deeper past the palms where rain collected in rocks before running toward the sea. He marked the path with strips of white cabin fabric tied to branches. I collected leaves wide enough to reinforce the shelter while he cut palm ribs with the small knife. He moved with pain hidden under discipline. Every time he reached too high, his jaw locked. I pretended not to notice until pretending became cruelty. Your shoulder is worse. It is usable. You keep saying things like usable and functional as if your body is rented equipment. Today, it is. No, today it is the only body you have. He glanced at me. That almost sounded like concern. Do not make it emotional. A faint smile touched his mouth and vanished before it could become dangerous. You are learning my language. Unfortunately. By noon, the sun turned the beach white and vicious. We worked in the shade, dragging salvaged fabric over the shelter, tying rope between two palms, building a low wall of broken cabin panels to block the wind. Luca showed me how to twist palm fiber into rough cord. His hands moved around mine, guiding without taking over. In the office, he gave instructions like verdicts. On the island, his voice lowered into patience. Loop it under, pull through, then tighten. Not with your fingers. Use your wrist. I know how to tie things. This knot says otherwise. This knot is under pressure. So are we. I looked at him. He looked back, calm but not cold. The air between us shifted again, subtle and unwelcome. I pulled the cord too hard. It snapped. Wonderful, I muttered. Luca handed me another strip. Again. You enjoy watching people fail? No, I respect people who try again. The answer silenced me. I expected cruelty and kept finding discipline. I expected arrogance and kept finding restraint. None of it made him innocent, but it made my hatred work harder. Later, while carrying dry branches from the tree line, I stepped on a sharp shell hidden under sand. Pain shot through my foot. I dropped the branches and cursed. Luca turned so fast the knife was in his hand before I could blink. What happened? Nothing. Elena? It's a cut. He came toward me. Sit. I can walk. I took one step and nearly folded. He caught my elbow, steady but careful. You can argue while sitting. You enjoy bossing injured women? Only stubborn ones who bleed on the beach. He helped me down onto a flat piece of wreckage. I tried to keep my foot away from him, but he took my ankle gently, as if I might break. The cut was deep enough to bleed, but not dangerous. Still, when his thumb brushed the sand from my skin, my breath caught. He noticed and paused. Did that hurt? No. Then why did you stop breathing? Because your hands are cold. My hands are not cold. Your soul is. Maybe it spreads. He looked at me for a moment, then cleaned the cut without answering. His focus made the world shrink to his fingers, the sting of water, the warmth of his palm under my heel. A Mafia boss kneeling in sand, wrapping my foot with a strip of his own torn shirt, should have felt absurd. Instead, it felt intimate in a way I did not know how to fight. You should not waste your shirt, I said quietly. I have survived worse losses. Like what? His fingers stilled for half a second. Childhood. I waited, but the door closed in his face before another word came through. He tied the bandage and released my foot. Do not step without watching. Yes, sir. Careful. I may start enjoying your obedience. Do that and I'll walk into the ocean. This time he did laugh. Not much, not freely, but enough to change his face. It startled me so badly I forgot to look away. Luca Romano had a beautiful smile because it looked like something he had not allowed himself in years. He seemed to realize it too. The smile disappeared. Silence returned. I missed it immediately and hated myself for that. The second night came colder than the first. The island looked warm in daylight, all blue water and golden sand. But after sunset, the wind turned sharp and wet. We had a stronger fire now, a better shelter. A small pile of coconuts, 2 food packets left, and water stored in the metal container. Luca insisted we ration everything. I accused him of being dramatic. Then hunger woke inside me, and I stopped joking. He gave me the larger half of the food. I noticed because hunger makes fairness visible. Switch, I said. No. Luca. Eat. You need strength too. I have more reserves. That is the polite Mafia way of calling me smaller again. It is the accurate way. Accuracy is annoying. He leaned back against a palm trunk, the firelight cutting bronze along his cheekbones. So is dying. I broke the food and placed part of it in his hand. Then don't. He stared at the piece resting on his palm. You do not need to take care of me. I'm not. I'm protecting my investment. If you collapse, I have to drag you, and you are heavy. He accepted the food. A fair transaction. The same words from yesterday, but softer now. Wind moved across the beach. I pulled his coat around me, then looked at his bare forearms. He was shivering. Not obviously. Luca would rather bleed publicly than shiver honestly. The tremor came in small betrayals, fingers tightening, shoulders locking, jaw clenching. I watched for almost a minute before anger rose. You're cold. I'm fine. You are shaking. The wind is strong. Your pride is stronger, but not smarter. I stood, walked around the fire, and sat beside him with the coat still around my shoulders. He turned his head slowly. What are you doing? Surviving, in your language. I opened one side of the coat and pushed it over his arm. His body went still. Too still, Elena. Do not start a conversation you are not ready to finish, I said, throwing his own line back at him. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he allowed the coat to cover both of us. Our shoulders touched. Heat moved between us, immediate and shocking. The fire cracked. The ocean breathed. I stared straight ahead, pretending my heart had not changed its rhythm. Luca's voice came low beside me. You do not have to do this. I know. Then why? I looked at the flames. Because you would do it for me. His silence became heavy. That is a dangerous assumption. No, it is an inconvenient truth. He leaned his head back against the palm and closed his eyes. The line of his throat moved as he swallowed. You should hate me. I do. Not very efficiently. I'm tired. That explains many mistakes. I should have moved away. Instead, I stayed. His arm slowly relaxed beside mine. I felt the exact moment he stopped resisting the warmth. It was not trust, not yet. More like surrender forced by exhaustion. Still, it made my chest ache. That day in your office, I said before I could lose courage. When I asked for help. Did you even think about my mother after I left? His eyes opened. The fire reflected in them. Yes, I waited. He offered nothing else. That's it? For now. Why? Because some answers require more than a campfire and a cracked skull. That sounds like another way to avoid guilt. Maybe. The honesty cut deeper than denial. I turned toward him. You humiliated me. His face tightened. I know. You made me feel like asking for help was shameful. I know. And you let me hate you. His gaze lowered to the fire. Yes, I wanted an excuse. A cruel answer would have restored the old shape of him. Instead, he gave me quiet responsibility, and I did not know where to put it. Why? I whispered. Luca's jaw worked once. Because kindness with my name attached to it can become a target. That makes no sense. It does in my world. Your world is sick. Yes. The word was so simple it stopped me. A gust of wind pushed sparks toward the ocean. Luca shifted slightly, angling his body to block it from me without seeming to. I noticed everything now. His small protections. His hidden pain. His refusal to let need become visible. Who taught you to live like that? I asked. His eyes stayed on the dark water. Everyone who survived around me. The next morning, clouds gathered over the sea. Luca noticed first. He stood on the beach for a long time, studying the horizon, one hand pressed against his injured ribs. The sky had turned white-gray, the ocean darker, restless. Storm, he said. How bad? Bad enough that our shelter may not hold. Comforting. I was not trying to comfort you. You rarely are. He looked at me then. That is not true. The answer landed too softly. I turned away and started collecting more palm branches. We spent hours reinforcing the shelter, dragging heavier panels from the wreck, tying everything down with rope and twisted fiber. My bandaged foot burned. Luca's shoulder worsened. Neither of us stopped. By late afternoon, the wind had teeth. The palms bent hard. Waves struck the shore with heavy, angry force. We moved our supplies higher toward the trees. Luca checked the shelter again. then looked toward the wreckage. If the wind turns, we may need the fuselage section. The broken plane? The part that is not burned. Metal holds better than palm leaves, unless it slices us in half. Every option has personality flaws. I stared at him. You become funnier when dehydrated. I will try not to enjoy that. The first rain hit like thrown stones. Within minutes, the beach disappeared behind sheets of water. Wind ripped at the shelter. The fire hissed and died. Darkness arrived early, thick and loud. Luca grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the reinforced side as the roof snapped above us. A palm branch tore loose and flew past my face. "Move!" he shouted. We ran for the partial fuselage, heads down, sand and rain stinging our skin. My injured foot slipped. Luca caught me around the waist, but the motion cost him. A piece of loose metal swung in the wind and slammed into his shoulder. He made no sound, which frightened me more than a cry would have. We reached the wreckage and crawled into a torn section tilted against rocks. It smelled of smoke and salt, but it blocked the worst of the wind. Luca braced a loose panel at the entrance while rain hammered the metal above us. "Your shoulder," I said. "Later." "No, now." "Elena, hold that panel." "I am holding it." "You're bleeding." I said later. Lightning flashed, white and violent. For 1 second his face looked carved from pain. Then the thunder hit, and the panel shook hard enough to tear free. Luca shoved his body against it, shielding me from the open rain. "Get behind me. Stop doing that." "Doing what?" "Putting yourself between me and everything. It keeps working. It will kill you." His eyes found mine through the dark. "Not tonight. The storm lasted forever. Maybe hours. Maybe a lifetime." We crouched inside the broken plane while rain turned the world outside into noise. Water leaked through gaps and ran down our backs. Cold sank deep. I could not stop shivering. Luca's body heat became the only solid thing in the dark. At first, we stayed apart. Pride drew a line between us. Hypothermia erased it. He pulled me against him with one arm, his back to the opening, his body taking the wind. I should have resisted. I did not. My cheek rested against his chest. His heartbeat was slower than mine, but not calm. Nothing about him was calm now. He was holding control together with both hands. "You're burning," I whispered. "I am cold." "No, fever." He did not answer. I touched his forehead. Heat. Too much heat. "Luca, it is nothing. If you say usable or functional, I will hit you." A weak breath left him. Noted. His injured shoulder had swollen badly. The skin around the impact was dark, and the cut near his collarbone had reopened. I tore a clean strip from the emergency blanket lining and used the last antiseptic wipe from the kit. He sat with his back against the fuselage wall, jaw locked, while I cleaned the wound. His eyes closed once, hard. "Does it hurt?" I asked. "Yes." The answer startled me. "You admitted that." Storm must be worse than I thought. I pressed the bandage into place, then held it there because there was no tape left. His skin burned under my palm. Rain roared overhead. In the tiny metal shelter, the world had shrunk to his breathing and my hand over his wound. "Who takes care of you when you're like this?" I asked. "No one sees me like this." That is not what I asked. His eyes opened. Fever made them brighter, less guarded. "No one." The word slipped under my ribs. I thought of his office, his guards, his wealth, his reputation, all that power circling him like walls. "Necessary," he had said. "Not loved." I looked down at my hand on his chest. "That sounds lonely." "It is safe." "No, Luca. It is lonely." His gaze moved over my face, slower than usual, as if fever had taken away the distance he kept. "You say my name differently now." I stilled. "How?" "Like you are no longer throwing it." I wanted to deny it. I could not. The storm gave us nowhere to hide. His head tipped back against the metal. For a while, he drifted in and out, not fully asleep, not fully awake. Fever loosened words he would never have offered in daylight. "Do not let them see softness," he murmured. I leaned closer. "Who?" "Men who smell weakness." "You're safe." "Bosses are never safe." His brows pulled together. "A boss does not beg, does not need, does not love in places where enemies can count it." My throat tightened. "Who told you that?" "Everyone." His voice broke on the last syllable. I pressed the wet hair back from his forehead. They were wrong. His eyes opened. No, they survived. That is not the same as living. He stared at me as if I had spoken in a language he once knew but had forgotten. I kept my hand on his forehead, cooling the fever with a damp cloth, and felt something inside me fold open despite every warning. This was not forgiveness, not yet. The wound he had left in me still existed. But hate requires distance, and Luca was too close, too human, too painfully alone. Near dawn, the storm weakened. Rain softened to a steady whisper. The fuselage creaked around us. Luca's fever eased enough for him to focus. I gave him water from our metal container, holding it while he drank. His hand shook too much to hide. You scared me, I said. I apologize for the inconvenience. Do not hide behind manners. His eyes moved to mine. What do you want me to say? The truth. He looked away. The truth is not always a gift. Neither is silence. He absorbed that. Outside, the sky began turning gray. I gathered courage from exhaustion. That day in your office, you said personal tragedy does not pause business. I went to the bathroom and cried into my hand because I could not let your men hear me. My mother survived, but I never forgave you. I need you to know that. His face tightened like every word landed physically. I know. Stop saying that. I do know. Then why? His throat moved. For the first time, Luca Romano looked afraid of an answer. Because I had men in that room who would have used your mother's name against you if they knew she mattered to me. The world seemed to pause. Mattered to you? He closed his eyes briefly. Your work mattered. Your loyalty mattered. Your life outside my office mattered more than you realized. Anger rose because softness came too late. So you humiliated me to protect me? I made a cruel choice because I thought cruelty would be cleaner. It was not clean. I know. It was not protection. It was abandonment with better excuses. He looked at me then, and the pain in his eyes was open enough to hurt. Yes, one honest word. No defense, no strategy. I stood because I could not breathe in the small space anymore. Rain dripped from the torn metal. My bandaged foot throbbed. Do you understand what you did to me? I have understood it every day since. Then why did you never say anything? His voice dropped. Because I did not know how to stand in front of you without the monster you already believed in. That stole my anger's next breath. I stepped out into the wet morning before tears could embarrass me. The island after the storm looked wounded. Branches scattered across the beach. Our shelter leaned half-collapsed. The signal X had been ripped apart. Supplies had survived only because we had moved them higher. The ocean glittered under a pale sky as if it had not spent the night trying to erase us. Luca followed a few minutes later, slower than usual, one arm held close to his side. We need a better signal, he said. You need rest. Rescue will not arrive because I rested. Rescue also will not arrive if you die trying to impress the sky. He looked at me. I am not trying to impress the sky. Good. It has seen planes before. A tired smile touched his mouth. Then his gaze moved toward the rocky rise at the far end of the beach, where dark stone climbed above the palms. High ground. If we rebuild the signal up there using the mirror and smoke, we may have a better chance. Your shoulder can barely move. Then you will have to do the work. That sounded almost like trust. Do not make it emotional. I rolled my eyes, but something warm moved through my chest. We spent the morning gathering what remained. Mirror shards, bright fabric, rope, damp wood, dry fibers from the protected part of the wreckage. The climb to the rocks was harder than it looked. My foot slowed us. Luca's shoulder made every reach dangerous. We moved together anyway. Not smoothly, not gracefully, but with a rhythm we had not had before. He steadied me on loose stones. I carried the lighter supplies so he would stop pretending pain was a personality. Halfway up I slipped. Luca caught my waist with his good arm, pulling me against him. My hands landed on his chest. For a second the beach, the wreckage, the hunger, the fear all fell away. His face was inches from mine. Rainwater clung to his lashes. Careful, he said, voice rough. I am. No, you are brave. That is different. I could not look away. Do you compliment all stranded employees? Only the ones who pull me out of fires. A fair transaction? No, The answer was immediate, quiet, dangerous. My heart moved hard against my ribs. No! His eyes dropped to my mouth, then returned to my eyes with visible effort. Some debts cannot be balanced. The air changed. My hands were still on him. His arm was still around me. If I leaned closer, there would be no easy way back. Luca seemed to know it too. "Elena," he said. And my name sounded less like an order now, more like a warning he was giving himself. "Don't look at me like I'm better than I am." My voice came out softer than I intended. "Then stop proving me wrong." For one breath, he almost kissed me. I felt it before it happened, the pull, the surrender, the terrible possibility. Then I stepped back. Not because I did not want it. Because I did, and wanting him before I understood him felt like another crash. Luca let me go at once. No anger, no pressure. Only a shadow crossing his face. "You are right," he said. "About what?" "It is too soon." That gentleness almost undid me. We reached the top of the rocks near noon. From there, the island looked small and impossible. Beach curved like a pale scar. Jungle gathered dark behind it. Wreckage split along the shore. Ocean stretching without mercy in every direction. I felt the truth of our isolation more sharply from above. Down below, the beach had fooled me into thinking we occupied a place. Up here, I saw we were a speck. Luca set the mirror pieces in a shallow circle and arranged fabric strips into a bright marker across the dark stone. I collected dry fibers from the bag while he built a smoke base. "If a plane passes, we use the mirror," he said. "If a boat appears, we build smoke. And if nothing appears?" He tied a strip of fabric to a stick and planted it between rocks. "Then we keep living until something does." I looked at his profile, the bruises, the blood, the stubborn life in him. "You make survival sound simple. It is not simple. It is narrow." "What does that mean?" "One task at a time, 1 hour, 1 breath. Panic wants the whole future at once. Survival refuses to give it." I remembered my mother's hospital room, the monitor beeping, the bills, the way 1 hour could become an entire world when fear narrowed it. "That is the first useful thing you have ever taught me. I will try not to ruin the moment." We worked until the sun burned through clouds. Then, just as we began descending, my injured foot twisted on wet stone. I slipped sideways toward a sharp drop where waves smashed below. Luca lunged. His hand closed around my wrist. The movement tore through his injured shoulder. I heard it in the sound he failed to swallow. He pulled me back with brutal effort, but the loose rock under him broke. He went down hard, sliding toward the edge. "Luca!" I dropped to my knees and grabbed him with both hands. His body jerked to a stop with his boots hanging over the drop, one hand gripping a crack in the rock, the other useless from the injured shoulder. His face had gone white. "Let go of my bad arm," he forced out. "I'm not letting go of anything. Elena, listen. No. You cannot hold me. Watch me." My foot screamed. My ribs burned. My palm slid on wet stone. Below him, the ocean struck the rocks hard enough to explode white. Luca looked up at me, and for the first time since I had known him, real fear entered his eyes. Not for himself, for me. "If I pull you down, you won't. If I do, you let go." Rage filled me, clean and bright. "Stop ordering me to survive without you." The words changed his face. I braced my knees, wrapped both hands around his wrist, and pulled with everything left in me. He pushed with his good arm. Inch by inch, pain by pain, we dragged him away from the edge. When he finally rolled onto safe stone, I collapsed beside him, shaking so hard my teeth clicked. For several seconds, neither of us moved. The ocean roared below as if disappointed. Luca turned his head toward me. His breath came rough. Sweat and rain mixed on his face. "You saved me again." I stared at the sky because looking at him felt impossible. "Stop needing it." "I am trying. Try harder." A weak sound left him, almost laughter, then pain folded him in half. I pushed myself up and saw his shoulder bleeding through the bandage. Panic hit me fast. "We need to get down." "Give me a minute." "You do not have a minute. You are bleeding." "Elena." "No. You don't get to die after making me care." The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Luca went still. Even injured, even breathless, he caught the truth as it fell between us. His eyes searched mine. So you care? My throat tightened. I wanted to take it back, dress it as anger, call it Hawk. I could not. Not after the fire, the storm, his fever, his hand around my wrist, my own terror when he nearly fell. I pressed the bandage hard against his shoulder and looked away. Shut up and breathe. His hand, scraped and shaking, covered mine for one brief second. Not to move it. Not to control it. Just to feel that I was there. I am breathing, he said quietly. Because you told me to. I hated how close that sounded to trust. We started down from the rocks slowly, with my arm around his waist and his good arm over my shoulders. Every step hurt both of us. Neither complained. The beach waited below, bright and ruined, our shelter damaged, our fire gone, our signal rebuilt above us like a prayer. By the time we reached camp, Luca was barely standing. I eased him onto the sand beneath the palm shade and knelt beside him. His eyes were half closed, his face drained of color. But when I reached for the water, he caught my wrist. Your foot first. I almost laughed from exhaustion. You are impossible. Efficient. Annoying. Alive. I looked at him then. At the cold Mafia boss stripped down to blood, fever, stubbornness, and sacrifice, and felt the last clean shape of my hatred collapse. Something else stood in its place, frightening because it had no name yet. I gave him water, held the cloth to his shoulder, and stayed beside him while the sun lowered over the empty sea. The island had taken our plane, our certainty, our distance, and almost his life. It had left us with hunger, pain, one damaged shelter, one signal on the rocks, and a truth I was no longer strong enough to deny. I had hated Luca Romano when we fell from the sky. But somewhere between the fire, the storm, and the edge of that cliff, hating him had become harder than holding on. The first rescue plane passed over us without seeing the signal. I was kneeling beside Luca under the palm shade, pressing a wet cloth against his fevered shoulder, when the sound cut through the afternoon like a blade. At first I thought the island was playing another cruel trick on me. Wind through broken metal sometimes sounded like voices. Waves against the wreckage sometimes sounded like footsteps. Hunger and fear had already taught my mind how to lie. Then Luca's eyes opened. Plane, he whispered. I looked up and saw a small white aircraft moving across the bright sky far beyond the line of palms. For one frozen second I could not move. Rescue had become an idea too painful to touch. Luca pushed himself up on one elbow and nearly collapsed. Mirror, he said. I grabbed the cracked cabin mirror from our supplies and ran toward the open beach, my injured foot screaming with every step. Here, I shouted, waving one arm, flashing sunlight with the mirror in wild, desperate bursts. We're here. The plane kept moving. It did not turn. It did not slow. It became smaller, quieter, farther away, until the sky swallowed it completely. My arm dropped. The silence that followed felt heavier than the crash. Behind me, Luca tried to stand and failed. I turned before he hit the sand and caught him badly, both of us sinking to our knees. They didn't see us, I said, hating how small my voice sounded. Luca's breathing was rough. His skin burned under my hands, but his eyes stayed locked on the sky. Then we make them see us next time. What if there is no next time? There is always a next task. I am tired of tasks. His gaze came to mine, stripped of command and pride. So am I. That honesty nearly broke me. I sat beside him in the sand, our shoulders touching, the dead fire between us and the ocean stretching beyond hope. For the first time since we reached the island, Luca did not tell me what to do. He did not build, plan, ration, calculate, or turn fear into instructions. He leaned his head against the palm trunk and closed his eyes, too exhausted to pretend. I looked at him, at the bruises across his ribs, the blood dried at his temple, the bandage I had tied around his shoulder, the torn black shirt that no longer made him look untouchable. The island had taken his title first, then his suit, then his distance, and finally his silence. Under all of it, he was still dangerous, still proud, still Luca Romano. But he was also a man who had spent days giving me the larger share of water, standing between me and storms, carrying pain like it was part of his job, and whispering truths fever had dragged from places he had locked for years. I hated that the rescue plane had missed us. I hated more that I had looked at the sky and thought, if they take us back, will I lose this version of him? That night, Luca's fever returned. Not as violently as before, but enough to keep me awake. I rebuilt the fire with shaking hands, fed it slowly, and used the last clean fabric to cool his face. He drifted in and out, speaking in fragments. Some were Italian. Some were names I did not know. Once he opened his eyes and looked at me with a clarity that made my breath stop. "If we get back," he said, "do not let them make you feel small." "Who?" "My world. Your world does not scare me. It should. It did before." His fingers found mine in the dark. "And now?" I looked at our joined hands. His grip was weak, but he still held on like letting go required permission. "Now I know its boss bleeds." A tired smile touched his mouth. "You will use that against me. Every chance I get." His thumb brushed my knuckles. "Good." He slept after that, and I stayed awake watching the tide. Near dawn, I made a decision. Waiting was not enough. The signal on the rocks needed smoke strong enough to stain the sky. I gathered damp leaves for thick smoke, dry fibers for flame, and pieces of black rubber from the wreckage because Luca said dark smoke carried farther. I worked until my hands blistered. When he woke, I expected anger because I had moved without him. Instead, he watched me from the shade with something quiet in his eyes. "You made a smokestack. I listened when you taught me. That is dangerous. For who?" "Anyone who underestimates you." I tried to smile, but my throat tightened. "You did. Yes, no excuse. No elegant dodge. Just the truth." I knelt beside him and handed him water. "Do you still?" He took the container, drank slowly, then answered with his eyes on mine. "No. Now I fear you may be stronger than I am." "That is not a fear. That is good sense." He almost laughed. The sound was weak but real. Later that morning, we saw the boat. It appeared as a white mark on the horizon, so small I thought it was sunlight at first. Then it moved against the waves. Luca forced himself to stand, swaying once before I put my arm around his waist. Together, we climbed halfway toward the rocks, close enough to reach the smokestack without risking the cliff again. My foot throbbed. His body leaned heavier with each step. We lit the dry fibers. The first flame caught, then the damp leaves smoked. I added rubber. Thick black smoke twisted upward into the blue sky. Luca took the mirror from me and angled sunlight toward the boat with slow, precise flashes. "Keep feeding it," he said. "I am." More leaves. "I know." "Elena, if you say one more order, I will push you down the hill after rescue." His mouth curved. A fair threat. The boat changed direction. I saw it before I believed it. It turned toward us, cutting across the water with a white trail behind it. My knees almost gave out. Luca's arm tightened around me. Whether to steady me or himself, I could not tell. "They see us," I whispered. "Yes, they really see us." His voice was low near my ear. "I told you we would make them." The rescue came in pieces. Shouting men in orange jackets, a small inflatable boat fighting the surf, hands reaching for me, medical questions I could not answer. A blanket wrapped around my shoulders, though I still wore Luca's ruined coat. When they tried to lift me first, I grabbed Luca's wrist. "Together," I said. The rescuer misunderstood and told me he would be right behind me. I shook my head hard enough to make my vision blur. "No, together." Luca looked down at my hand holding his wrist. Something changed in his face, something too private for the strangers around us. "Elena, go. Do not start. You are injured. So are you. You first. Not anymore." The words rose out of the island, out of the fire, the storm, the cliff, the nights we survived by refusing to let the other disappear. Luca stared at me, then gave the smallest nod. "Together," he said. We left the island the same way we had survived it. One hand locked around the other, both too stubborn to let go. The hospital felt louder than the crash. Machines beeped. Doors opened and closed. Doctors asked questions. Nurses moved around me with professional kindness that made me want to cry. They cleaned my cuts, wrapped my foot properly, checked my ribs, scanned my head, and told me I was lucky. I knew that. Luck had Luca's heartbeat and smoke in its hair. He was taken to another room for his shoulder, dehydration, fever, and bruised ribs. The first time they separated us, panic rose so fast I nearly pulled the IV out of my arm. A nurse touched my shoulder and said, "He is down the hall." Down the hall felt like another continent. Hours later, I saw him again through a glass panel. He was sitting upright in a private hospital room, wearing a white shirt instead of black, one arm in a sling, his face cleaner but somehow harder. Men in dark suits stood around him. His world had arrived. Guards, advisors, lawyers, silent men with expensive shoes and watchful eyes. They filled the room without crowding it, waiting for his voice, his glance, his permission. Luca Romano was back among people who feared him, and I watched the island begin to disappear from his face. He saw me through the glass. For 1 second, the mask cracked. His eyes softened. Then an older man stepped into my view. Tall, silver-haired, dressed in a dark suit that looked older than fashion and heavier than money. Vittorio. I knew his name from office whispers. Luca's consigliere, his father's old friend, the man who had helped turn a grieving boy into a feared boss. He looked at me through the glass as if I were sand still clinging to Luca's shoes. The nurse guided me back before I could hear what they said. 2 days passed in that strange half-life between survival and return. Luca sent doctors, food, fresh clothes, security outside my door, in silence. He did not come, not once. The first day, I told myself he needed treatment. The second I understood, he was building the wall again, brick by brick, using protection as an excuse for distance. On the third morning, Vittorio visited me. He entered my room after a soft knock, carrying no flowers, no apology, no warmth. "Miss Vale," he said. "How are you recovering?" "Alive." "Good." Luca insisted on the best doctors. Luca could insist on coming himself. Vittorio's expression did not change. "He is managing many responsibilities." "Of course. Personal tragedy does not pause business." His eyes sharpened at the phrase. "You should understand something. An island creates unusual bonds. Fear, hunger, injury, isolation. Such conditions can make survival feel like love." My hands tightened around the blanket. "Did Luca send you to say that?" "No, Luca is not ready to hear it. But you are?" "I am old enough to know that a man in his position cannot afford weakness." I looked at him carefully. "You think I am weakness. I think you are human. That makes you more dangerous than any enemy." The words landed with quiet cruelty because they were not shouted. He continued. "On the island you saw Luca without his name. Here, his name feeds families, pays debts, holds violence in balance, and keeps men loyal who would become monsters without a stronger monster above them. If he begins choosing softness, people will test him. Maybe they should." Vittorio's mouth tightened. "You are young." "No, I am tired." He studied me for a moment, then turned toward the door. "If you care for him, do not ask him to become someone his world will destroy." After he left, I sat in the hospital bed and felt the island pull farther away. Maybe Vittorio was right in one way. Maybe survival had made everything sharper than real life. Maybe Luca had only been soft because there was no one around to punish him for it. That evening, a nurse brought discharge papers and a small folder of medical documents. "Your mother called twice," she said kindly. She sounded worried. "We told her you were stable, my mother. Rosa Vale, stubborn, warm, still alive because of a miracle payment I had never understood." I flipped through the folder while the nurse checked my IV site. A financial receipt slipped from the papers. Most of the hospital costs were covered by Luca's private medical account. That did not surprise me. What froze me was the old note attached below. Previous emergency payment verified through Romano Relief Trust. Date: 1 year earlier. My mother's surgery date. My hands went cold. "Where did this come from?" I asked. The nurse glanced at it. "Billing added your previous record because both were connected to the same payer." "Same payer?" "Yes. Romano Relief Trust. Mr. Romano's office authorized both." The room went silent around me. 1 year of hatred shifted under my feet. Anonymous payment. Before midnight. My mother saved after Luca had cut me open with one sentence. He had paid. He had paid and let me believe he had done nothing. Anger returned. But it no longer had the clean shape I trusted. I got out of bed before the nurse finished protesting. I walked down the hall in hospital socks, 1 foot bandaged, ribs aching, hair still tangled from sleep, wearing a loose sweater someone from Luca's staff had left for me. 2 guards outside Luca's room stepped into my path. "Miss Vale, Mr. Romano is resting. Move." They did not. I looked through the glass. Luca sat at the edge of his bed while Vittorio spoke to him. His face was pale, his arms strapped, his eyes darker than I had ever seen them. He looked up and saw me. I lifted the receipt. Something in his expression told me he understood. "Let her in," he said through the open crack of the door. The guards moved. Vittorio turned as I entered, displeasure written in every controlled line of him. I ignored him. "You paid my mother's hospital bill." Luca stood slowly. "Elena, did you?" Silence. I hated silence again. "Answer me." "Yes." The word broke something open. "You paid it after telling me personal tragedy does not pause business." "Yes." "You let me hate you for a year." "Yes." My voice shook. "Why would you do that?" Vittorio stepped forward. "This is not the place." Luca did not look at him. "Leave us. Luca. Now." The old man's face hardened, but he left. The door closed softly behind him. Luca and I stood alone in a room that smelled of antiseptic instead of smoke. The island felt impossibly far. "Tell me," I said. Luca looked down at his bandaged hand. 3 men were in my office that day. One had already sold information about my staff to a rival family. I knew it, but I did not know how much he had taken. If I showed him your mother mattered, if I gave you leave with concern, if I paid openly, your name could have entered a world you were not built to survive. So you chose to humiliate me. I chose badly. You made me feel ashamed for needing help. His eyes lifted, raw and steady. "I know. Stop saying you know. I cannot stop knowing it." The anger in me trembled because it had nowhere clean to go. "You could have told me later." I tried. "No, you didn't. I stood outside your office 3 days after your mother's surgery." The memory came slowly. A shadow at my door, a pause, then nothing. "You walked away." "Yes." "Why?" His voice dropped. "Because I saw you laughing on the phone with her. You sounded relieved, free. I thought if I entered, I would bring back the worst moment of your life with my face attached to it. That was not your choice to make. No. You keep making choices for me and calling it protection." Pain crossed his face. Yes, I stepped closer, tears burning now. "You did it on the island, too. You gave me food, water, your coat, your body between me and danger, then acted like it was all strategy. You do not get to decide what your care means and hide the truth because honesty scares you." Luca looked at me as if every word stripped him cleaner than the sea had. I was afraid. The admission stopped me. "Of what?" "That you would see me clearly and still choose to hate me." My breath caught. He took a careful step toward me, not touching, leaving the choice in the space between us. On that island, I had nothing to offer except what I was. No money. No name, no men. No fear. You saw me bleeding, weak, useful only because I refused to let you die. That should have terrified me less than this room, but it did not. Why? His eyes held mine, because here I can become the man you hated again. The truth landed softly, devastatingly. I wanted to reach for him. I wanted to hit him. I wanted the island back because pain had been simpler there. "Then don't," I whispered. His face tightened. "It is not that easy. No. My world will call you weakness." I am not. Weakness. They will use you to judge me. Let them. They will test every boundary I soften. Then build better boundaries. Do not become dead inside and call it strength. He looked away, breathing hard through pain he would have hidden from anyone else. "Vittorio is calling a family dinner tomorrow night. Advisors, captains, elders. They expect me to make it clear that what happened on the island was survival. Nothing more." My chest went cold. "Is that what you want?" He did not answer fast enough. That was answer enough to hurt. I stepped back. "Do not protect me by lying again." "Elena." "No. If you choose your mask, say it honestly." "I survived a plane crash. I can survive the truth." I left before he could respond. The next night, I went to the Romano estate because running would have made Vittorio right. The house sat above the water behind iron gates, All white stone, glass, and controlled beauty. Men in black suits watched me enter. None stopped me. Luca must have given orders. Or maybe everyone wanted to see the woman from the island before she was erased from the story. The dining room was long, polished, and cold with wealth. 12 men sat around the table. Vittorio stood near Luca's right side. Luca wore black again, not a suit as perfect as before, but close enough to look like armor. His sling was hidden under his jacket. Only I knew what that cost him. His eyes found me the moment I entered, and the room followed his gaze. No one spoke. I walked to the empty place near the end of the table. "Miss Vale," Vittorio said, "this is a private matter." "Then you should not have made me part of it." A few men shifted. Luca's expression did not change, but his eyes warmed by a degree only I could read. Vittorio turned to him. "Luca, this must be settled." Luca leaned back, silent. Vittorio took that as permission. The island created confusion. Gratitude, fear, dependence. These are understandable after trauma. But the family needs clarity. A Romano boss cannot be ruled by an emotional accident. I felt every eye on me. Once that room would have made me shrink. Now I remembered a cliff edge and Luca's hand slipping in mine. I remembered smoke signals, fever, and the stubborn beat of his heart against my ear. I had been afraid of this world before I saw its strongest man bleed. An emotional accident, I repeated. Vittorio's gaze was cold. Yes, I looked at Luca. Is that what I was? The question did not belong to the room, but the room held its breath for the answer. Luca stood, slowly. Pain flashed across his face before he buried it. "No." One word and the air changed. Vittorio's jaw tightened. "Think carefully." Luca's eyes did not leave mine. "I have done nothing else since the crash." "Then remember what you are." Luca turned toward him. "I remember exactly what I am. I am a man who fell from the sky with no guards, no weapons, no power, no name that mattered to the ocean. On that island, fear did not serve me. Money did not feed me. My reputation did not build fire. She did." The room went still. Luca stepped away from the head of the table. "She saved my life when leaving me would have been easier. She cared for me when I had given her every reason not to. She looked at the worst version of me. The wounded one, the useless one, the one none of you would respect, and she did not turn away." Vittorio's voice sharpened. "Love makes a boss predictable." Elena had never spoken in that room, but my voice rose before thought could stop it. "A boss who cannot love is already dead." Silence hit like thunder. Some men looked offended. Some looked away. Luca looked at me as if I had placed a weapon in his hands and called it mercy. Vittorio's face hardened. "You do not understand power." "No," I said. "I understand fear. This room is full of men calling it loyalty." One of the younger men moved as if to stand. Luca did not look at him. "Sit." The man sat. Luca came to me then, crossing the room with every eye on him. He stopped close enough that I could see the strain around his mouth. "Vittorio says I will lose respect if I choose you." My throat tightened. "And? Then they will learn a new kind." His hand reached for mine, slow enough that I could refuse. I did not. The second our fingers locked, his whole face changed. Not into softness exactly, but into truth. "I spent my life making people afraid of me," he said quietly, though every man heard him. "You were the first person who made me afraid of losing myself." My eyes burned. "I hated your silence." "I know." "I hated what you let me believe." "I know. And I am still angry." "Good." His thumb moved over my knuckles, the same gentle motion from the falling plane. "Be angry beside me, not away from me." Something inside me finally gave way. Not all the hurt, not the memory of that office, not the year he let me carry pain alone. Forgiveness is not a door that opens once. It is a road, and we had only reached the beginning. But love was there too, impossible and undeniable, born not from perfection but from fire, salt, fear, and the choice to stay. "I loved you before I was ready to forgive you," I whispered. Luca closed his eyes for 1 second, as if the words hurt and healed at once. Then he lowered his forehead to mine, not caring who watched. No dramatic kiss, no performance. Just breath, closeness, and a truth too strong for silence. Vittorio said nothing. Neither did the room. They had all spent years obeying the coldest man in Miami. That night they met the man beneath him, and no one knew what to do with that. 3 weeks later, Luca took me to the ocean. Not the island. Doctors said neither of us should fly yet, and maybe we were not ready to see the place that had nearly killed us. Instead, he brought me to a quiet private dock at sunrise, far from cameras, guards, and polished rooms. My mother was recovering at home, angry that I had not told her more, grateful in a way that made her cry when Luca visited and apologized to her face. He did not send flowers through an assistant. He stood in her small kitchen, too tall for the room, and said, "Mrs. Vale, I failed your daughter when she needed honesty." My mother looked him up and down, then said, "Yes, you did." Luca accepted it like a sentence. That was when I knew he meant to change. On the dock, the air smelled clean. Luca wore a simple black shirt, his sling gone but his shoulders still stiff. I wore a pale dress that moved in the wind. For once, there were no files between us, no emergency, no fire to feed, no men waiting for orders. He reached into his pocket and placed something in my palm. A small piece of smooth metal, silver and curved, polished at the edges. "What is this?" I asked. "From the wreckage. I found it in my coat after rescue." I turned it over. It was useless. Ordinary. A scar from the plane that had fallen. Why keep it? Luca looked toward the water. "Because it reminds me of the day I lost everything that made me untouchable." I closed my fingers around the metal and stepped closer. "No, it reminds you of the day you became reachable." He looked at me then, and the coldness was not gone from him completely. It never would be. Luca Romano had lived too long in rooms where softness was punished. But now when silence came, it no longer felt like a wall. Sometimes it was simply space where truth could breathe. "Are you afraid?" he asked. "Of you?" "Of us." I looked out at the ocean, bright and endless, no longer only a monster. "Yes," his hand found mine. "Good. Fear is strong." I smiled despite myself. "Use it?" "No," he said, voice low, warm, certain. "Share it." The sun lifted higher, turning the water gold. I thought of the woman I had been on that plane, sitting across from a man she hated, certain she understood his heart, because he had once broken hers. I thought of the crash, the fire, the storm, his fevered confessions, the cliff, the rescue, the room where he chose truth in front of men who worshipped fear. I had hated Luca Romano before the plane fell. But on that deserted island, where no one could fear him and no one could obey him, I finally met the man beneath the boss. He was wounded, stubborn, impossible, protective, flawed, lonely, and real. He did not save me perfectly. He did not love me easily. He did not become gentle overnight. But he stayed. He learned. He chose. And when I looked at him beside the ocean, holding the broken piece of our fall in my hand, I understood something I would never have believed at 30,000 feet. Sometimes love does not arrive like rescue. Sometimes it crawls out of wreckage, bleeding and stubborn, builds a fire with shaking hands, gives you its last warmth, and waits until you are brave enough to call it by its name.